It was a crisp morning when Martin set out on the forest trail, the air rich with the earthy scent of damp soil and pine. His plan was simple: hike to the summit before noon, enjoy the view, and return by evening. The path was well trodden, winding through dense trees and occasional clearings where the sunlight spilled like liquid gold. Martin had barely gone a mile when he felt it, a tiny, persistent jab in his left shoe. At first, he ignored it, assuming it was a twig or a bit of gravel. "No need to stop now," he muttered to himself, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "It'll settle as I walk." But the pebble did not settle. With every step it shifted, pressing into the soft part of his foot. At times it seemed to vanish, only to reappear, sharper than before. Martin gritted his teeth. He was making good time, and stopping would ruin his rhythm. "It's just a pebble," he reassured himself, quickening his pace. "I've dealt with worse." The trail grew steeper, the incline challenging his breath and balance. As the hours passed, the pebble felt as though it had doubled in size. His foot throbbed with every step, the discomfort creeping up his leg. By the time he reached a clearing with a wooden bench, Martin was limping. He glanced at the bench but kept moving. Stopping now would mean admitting defeat, he thought, pushing himself forward. But with each step, the pebble seemed to taunt him, its presence impossible to ignore. The beauty of the trail faded into the background, replaced by the single, all-consuming irritation in his shoe. By the time Martin reached the halfway point, his pace had slowed to a crawl. His foot was now swollen and tender, and he could no longer ignore the pain. Defeated, he finally sat down on a moss-covered rock, his breath coming in short, frustrated bursts. He untied his boot and peeled off his sock, wincing at the sight. His foot was red and raw, a blister forming where the pebble had pressed against his skin. Carefully, he shook out the shoe, and there it was, a tiny, insignificant pebble, no larger than a grain of rice. Martin stared at it, equal parts relieved and exasperated. "This little thing caused all that trouble?" he muttered, flicking the pebble into the grass. He rubbed his sore foot, feeling the tension in his body begin to ease. As he sat there, the forest seemed to come alive around him. Birds chirped in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The pain in his foot lessened, and with it, his frustration melted away. He realized how much of the journey he had missed by focusing solely on the discomfort. When Martin resumed his hike, his steps were lighter. The summit, when he finally reached it, was breathtaking, a panoramic view of rolling hills, distant rivers, and endless sky. But what stayed with him most was the lesson he had learned on the way up. On the descent, he paused more often, taking in the scenery and listening to the sounds of nature. And each time he felt the slightest discomfort, he stopped, untied his shoe, and checked for pebbles. Lesson: small problems, like the pebble in Martin's shoe, can grow into bigger issues if left unaddressed. It's better to pause and fix them early, allowing us to enjoy the journey without unnecessary pain.